welcome back, guys, to VuDivulged. I'm Ija Chambers.
I'm Anthony Polkowski.
And we got a topic that's going to kind of snowball into kind of more just the overall events that's been happening, especially in the last few years, I feel like. And that would be one of the recent shootings that happened on October 25th. Now, for the people that don't fully know, like, it happened to Lewiston, Maine, correct?
Yes.
I believe that's where it happened.
Lewiston, Maine. A man, which we are not going to say his name, because personally I believe that the people that commit these attacks do these attacks because they want to go down in infamy. They want to make a statement. They want to be remembered, and I personally think we should remember the victims, not the name of the shooter, so we will not be reviewing the name of the shooter, or because, like I said, I think that's what they want, and I don't want to grant them that.
Yeah. So, just from what we know, all the information that came out and all that this person carried out a shooting at a bowling alley and a bar. And around, 18 people were killed, and 13 more were injured, I believe.
According to our latest research, 18 people and 13 were injured. 18 were killed, 13 were injured. And he was not found by police for a few days. I believe they originally believed he committed suicide, but was later found.
Did they find out if did he commit suicide right after the event or sometime a little bit after?
I believe they found him.
Because I know that's been a major, basically the police, law enforcement.
Yeah, please. There was a manhunt.
Agencies, all that involved is how they did not find him quickly. I know that was major scrutiny over that. Especially if he did not kill himself immediately, they could have maybe caught him, arrested him. But I mean, if he did that, he was probably planning on it to begin with.
Yeah, he was. There was definitely a massive manhunt. A lot of agencies from all over the place, got together. Warnings were issued to the public. They had a good idea of who did it. Video footage. So alert went out. Anonymous tip line, I guarantee, was probably established, and the whole city was probably, looking for probably, what is it, EAS, Emergency Alert System, or
I believe so, yeah.
Maybe they didn't use EAS, but probably something on the lines of an Amber Alert. But for a shooter saying, hey, this person's out, he just committed a shooting, he's armed and dangerous. If you see something, do not approach him, call law enforcement immediately. But yes, there was a manhunt that went around for a few days, and the coroner's report believes he had taken his own life about 8 to 12 hours before his body was discovered in the back of a tractor trailer. So obviously, this is it's a very tragic situation. Those 18 people injured, 13 people injured in the 18 deaths, they were just innocent people. They were it was a bowling alley. They were all just sitting back, having fun. What was the second location again? I believe
it was a bar.
It was a bar, people just jamming at the bar, and this madman came in and took some of their lives and possibly, affected injuries on those who survived in ways that they,
they never recover.
They'll never recover, right? And that's not even including the mental challenges that these people will face in the later years. They'll probably feel very suspicious or cautious going out in public. They'll probably live in fear,
especially the families too that lost these individuals.
And unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in these types of shootings. This mass, one or two people will go to a very populated location and kill and injure indiscriminately, right? They just go there to seek death, essentially. So the question is obviously, well, what drives people to this point? And that's a very hot topic of debate. What causes it? Who's at fault? And which is what we're probably going to try to cover, or at least touch upon in this episode.
Mm-hmm. So kind of back to the initial shooting, like this was, I'm not going to say like his record was clean, because it was not.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of signs, which, that's always, hindsight's 2020.
Yes.
Looking back on it, you're like, oh, clearly there were these signs, but he was part of the Army Reserve, and family members and the military, even some in the police, all knew like something was up.
Yeah, I remember there was I don't know if it's still on TV, but there was a show I used to watch all the time called Seconds from Disaster, and literally in every, like the intro sequence, the line they always made sure to say was, disasters don't just happen. They're a series of critical events that if they were detected or taken more seriously prior, we probably could have averted disaster. They don't just happen. There were steps that led up to it.
Like, it's one of those things, like...
it's hard to talk about. It's because you want to be sensitive to those who were affected, but you need to ask the question, well, what is causing this? Why are we seeing a increase in these types of shootings and events? Why is it why is the trend increasing?
Just from, he went under a bunch of mental health evaluations, which is kind of a common trend with most of these shooters, is they have some type of mental health problem. But even then, like, I know when people say they have mental health problem, I know they're not trying to say that to excuse their action. They're just kind of saying, oh, that's one of the problems that led up to it. But even then, it's like, there has to be really something in there, like something evil.
And everybody's different when it comes to what's considered mental health problems, right? Some people have OCD where they just like to have everything in a certain way. Well, that's not necessarily bad, but you could argue it's a mental health thing. My mother works in a group home, and I've been raised in like groups homes, and she works with elderly people, and she had at one point worked with children with different types of mental disorders. And I've been surrounded by them, by these people who are affected with some mental disorders my entire life. And some of them they have some tics, but they're perfectly fine, and some of them need assistance. But the problem is it's a spectrum. There really isn't, they have this therefore they're this. It's a part of them, but it's not what defines them. So and with hindsight being 2020, they say, well, this dude had mental issues. Well, my first question is, did we know that before or after?
I think it was showed on a lot of his regular, like I said, military did evaluations. They were to his home, the town he lived in. They informed the local police on this to make sure the police were up to date. But I guess not much was done, or it wasn't. Like I said, it's mental health it's a wide spectrum. So I don't know if it warranted enough issue at the time.
Because maybe at the time, like they said, maybe it was he has like some tics of some mental stuff, but nothing so severe. Like, I don't remember exactly what they said he had, but if someone went to a psychiatrist and they said, oh, you just have OCD, well, that's a mental disorder, but that probably wouldn't prevent someone from buying a gun, right? I know that like some people with autism will follow instructions. Right, they will do exactly what they are told. So if you tell them, "Hey," and that is their autism. Their autism is they will do exactly what they're told, right? Because it's a spectrum. They don't take sarcasm very well. They don't take jokes very well because they take everything as it is, right? So if it's that level, that probably also wouldn't raise suspicion if they bought a gun, because if you train them on gun safety, they'll go, here are the 4 rules, I follow these rules. I don't break these 4 rules. So, people always say it's mental health, but it's, well, are there certain conditions? Are there certain areas of the spectrum where, then you raise the red flag? It's.
But I mean, one of the things.
I mean, it's a controversial and hard topic, but it needs to be addressed.
It's one of the things also, like, unless you're constantly, like, evaluating this person, like, week after week. Like, so I think they said, like, the military, like, his unit, like I said, they did a whole evaluation of him, told the police. The police also had some records on him about it. They knew, like, 5 months prior to this. But like I said, 5 months then, he was spiraling, but I don't think anyone would have jumped to this conclusion.
And that also leads to the point of someone could have had some shooters, they had their guns for years before they even thought about committing this. So people say, people's mental state can change throughout time. Now, I don't know what his job in the Army was or if he ever saw active combat, but he could have bought the gun, went to the Army, maybe went saw combat, then got his maybe suffered some traumatic events that mentally changed him, like PTSD, for example. But when he came back, he developed PTSD or another type of mental disorder, but he already had the gun, right? He had it when he was perfectly fine. But now, over time, a disorder had developed, and it doesn't have to be the military, it can be other traumatic events that, people sometimes experience in their lives. But then they go, well, this person was diagnosed with whatever. But when they bought the gun, they weren't. So when the background check came through, which, they do a background check when you buy a gun, they were clean because at the time there was nothing on record. They had never shown a problem. Some shooters never had a sign of mental health or like mental health problems. They never had a criminal record, right? So, the argument, is it mental health? Is it access to guns? Is it another factor? It's what is causing this increased trend. And in my personal opinion, one factor is the publicity they get. The people who commit these acts, they want to make a statement, right? They're mad at something and they want to make a statement. Well, what causes the news to blow up like anything else than a mass shooting, right? That's why it's kind of weird how a lot of shooters write a manifesto before they commit this act because they want to go down in history and they know that will be released to the public, and now people are going to want to read it. You are giving them, in my opinion, what they want. They want to make a statement, and that's why, unfortunately, I think schools, for example, are a massive hit because people go shootings or tragedies, which they are, but they are even worse, and it's multiplied when children were the target. Yeah, I mean,
this whole, I don't want to sound like this, but like so many shootings have happened so many times, like as this past few years, like just a general increase, like it happens so many times that when I see it on the news, like I'm not trying to act like I'm not, like when I see that I'm not like, that's terrible, but like when I see it on the news, I'm like, okay, another one.
Yeah.
Like, my empathy's there for those families, but it's like, I'm not shocked.
Yeah, because
I'm not shocked anymore.
I mean, it's the same thing on, back in the day when cars were first coming out, people will go, wow, a car crash. Wow, right? Now you hear a car crash and you go, okay, right? Back then when cars were new, it was shocking when, people, real tragedy when people were killed in cars, like car accidents. Nowadays, it's like it happens all the time. And unfortunately, that's where we are with these mass shootings. When they were relatively new 20, 30 years ago, everyone was like, who would do this? Nowadays, it's like you said, it's just, oh man, another one. And unfortunately, it has gotten to that point where it's, unfortunately, another one. But how do you address it, and how can you mitigate the chances of, a shooting occurring, right? Because unfortunately we can't predict where they're going to be. So obviously one would be one preventive measure would probably, law enforcement needs training in it.
As if they had the funding.
If they had the funding for it, they really need to, because police are going to be, and most often than not, police officers are going to be the first responders. Even during domestic terrorist attacks, which this is a conversation for another video, 99% of the time, police are going to be the first ones there. The police are going to respond, not the military. So they need training in how to deal with this situation. And some police departments, they'll tell you the fundamentals of it, like of how to deal with the active shooter situation, but you don't actually have the resources like some departments. Some departments, they'll go to like abandoned high schools or fake high schools that they've built and practice active shooter scenarios. Some officers are just told the fundamentals of stop the threat. And do not treat the wounded until you stop the threat. Because if you stop to treat somebody, more people are going to get shot while you do it. So you need to neutralize the threat. That way you minimize the number of casualties, because, let's say, there's 10 doctors, right? And, those doctors work 10 hours a day, right? And if there's 10 victims, each victim will get 10 hours of treatment from a doctor, right? But now if there's 20, well, now that's 5 per victim, right? So it's get in, neutralize the threat, and then treat the wounded. And that's all they're told. They don't actually experience or have training in actively, like a physical exercise. They're told what to do, but they don't practice doing it.
Like, you can give me the book, and I can look at the picture, but until I get hands-on with what I'm doing, I'll be honest, I'm going to and most of that stuff, like training, builds up that muscle memory, so then your body kind of knows what to do. But the other thing, like, if it happens, like, what do I do?
And some people learn differently. Like me, you put a textbook down in front of me, I will have to read that textbook, even if it's the same page, for an hour before I memorize it. We do a physical exercise for 15 minutes, I'll remember it much longer. That's just me. So I think one thing we can do to mitigate these is give the officers more training. Make it to where a potential shooter knows that they are trained, that your local police department is trained to deal with people like you, and they're not just going to sit idly by. I think another thing we can do is maybe increase school resource officers at schools. If you read a lot of shooters' manifestos, a lot of them say, like, well, I was going to go to location A, but I saw that they had an armed guard, so I went to location B. Because what a lot of people don't realize is the reason why shooters pick certain locations like schools and stuff is because they know no one can fight back. They know they don't have the means to stop them. And, and I know we just talked about funding the police, but, people say in a life or death situation, when seconds matter, the police are minutes away, right? Don't get me wrong, the police, if you call them about a shooter, they will get there as fast as they can. But let's say it takes them 5 minutes to get there. For that 5 minutes, you're on your own. Some people even say that the people who are at the scene are the first responders. So maybe having a school resource officer, maybe private security guards that are armed and who are trained, maybe, and these are all, hot topic issues, maybe giving the teachers training on how to deal with it, because they often are the first line of defense when it comes to the students. So, and once again, the attackers are looking for easy targets. If they don't go anywhere that they think there's a threat that can oppose them. You see it all the time. For example, in like those self-defense videos where a robber will have a gun, but the moment they see that the person they're robbing has one, they run away. It's because they weren't looking for they wanted an easy target. They were hoping that their potential victim couldn't fight back. But once you show that you do, they're out of there. They don't want any resistance, not even a little bit of. They're not willing to tolerate a little bit of resistance. They want no resistance. So I think strengthening security measures, and I say let's say active security measures. I don't like, let's say, passive And by passive, I mean like doors. Like awesome, locked doors. Awesome. You were in high school. They said when we did Code Blue or Run, Hide, Fight, whatever they called it at your school, it was lock the door. Okay, but the shooter in Nashville, for example, just shot out the glass and walked in.
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. As a kid, I never really fully understood those shooter drills because part of me was like, all right, so we shut the door and turn off the lights. Everyone's doing the same. They know you're in there. And just from what we can see, a lot of people that shoot up, especially those schools, are people that went to that school beforehand or is currently going to that school. Not saying every single time, but a lot of those are. So, I mean, they know how it's done.
Well, I think the vast majority of shooters worked or used to go, whether it be a school or a workplace shooting, went to the place that they shot up. They know the drill. They know where people are hiding. They know how to get from point A to point B. My high school, for example, I personally thought it was the most unsecure place ever. The interior of the school was designed to be open. There were some classrooms that didn't have doors. Some classrooms, the windows were just plain glass. Which, don't get me wrong, it felt nice and open, but at the same time, it's like, they were like, all right, kids, hide. And we would literally go, where? That entire wall right there is made of glass. You can look into this whole room from the outside. Where are we hiding? Right? And, a lot of schools, have those double doors in the office, right? You go through the front door, you go to the office, and then you go through another set of double doors. In my school, they have the main entrance, and then they have this back entrance where the parking lot was. So, yes, this was technically main entrance. This back entrance was really the main entrance because, like I said, that's where the parking lot and the bus rider line was. But to get to the office, you buzzed me in, right? Because keep in mind, parents have to come to see their kids, right? Buzz me in. I then have to walk about 30, 40 feet down to the desk. But I have access to, we called it the NPR because it was our lunchroom / auditorium / PE room. We called it the NPR, multi-purpose room. I was like, wait a minute. I could literally come through. They buzz me in, right? And instead of walking this way, turn right. Literally, the door here, NPR here, desk here. If I was a shooter, I could literally just walk in, turn right. So, and the school's open, so where were the kids going to hide? Because a lot of the doors also didn't lock.
I mean, this
and just
all this comes around. Oh, go ahead. My apologies.
Sorry. When I was, middle school for me personally was the first time when I was going through. It was was it middle school? I'm pretty sure it was middle school. It might have been early elementary, where we were one time doing those drills. And even as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, however old I was at the time, I was like, if someone was to come into this school, am I really just supposed to sit here? Right? Like, because, most of them, because I've wanted to work in law enforcement and go in Homeland, so I've been studying this, stuff like this my whole life. I go, most of the shooters, most of the people who commit these acts, like we said earlier, used to go to the place that they shot up. So, if I'm in this school, statistically, the person who, if shot up the school, went here. They know where we're hiding, right? They're hiding in the corner where you can't see through the door, right? Look through the door and like, okay, I can see this corner, and that corner. So they're probably in that corner. I'm like, why do we just sit here?
I don't know about you, but most of my walls in my school is like drywall. So if they start just shoot rounds right through the wall,
thankfully in my school, most of them were brick. But made the schools kind of also feel like a prison a little bit, and that's kind of another debate. So I personally think active measures, like guards, for example.
So we've been going on about like the response, kind of deter the threat, but then it comes around to people could bring up the mental health part, and I'm going to be honest with you, I have no clue what is going on with nowadays because like this shooting like school shootings and mass shootings back in the day were mainly like gang feel away. So you can't really those are different. Those are like between gangs.
It changed around
You know,
Columbine,
you
right?
get what I'm, yeah, Columbine when that happened.
That's when we kind of saw the shift.
And there were some a little bit beforehand too, but those are very, very rare compared to now. But those, like, what mental health, what changed so much make where this is so commonplace now? Or what mental health issues are so bad nowadays compared to back then that make people want to do this more often? You get see what I'm saying? Is I can't wrap my head around it because I don't understand. Like, oh no, like, not once in my mind have I ever thought, like, I guess I never really had any real mental issues or whatever, but not once in my mind thought, man, I'm super angry. This is really starting to grind my gears, whatever. I'm going to go to that school and I'm going to kill everyone I see. Why? What? Or just go anywhere and do that. What in your mind makes you want to do that?
I think
I don't know, man.
You know, most of the time, you know, when you read these manifestos, they said, "I've had enough," right? It's so is it? You know, a lot of these people, they were, you know, bullied, and I'm not justifying their actions by any means. Like, clearly, you know, some people, like the Nashville shooter, they hadn't gone there for years.
They're like 28.
Yeah, they're like 28 and went to an elementary school.
Wow.
But I think one is like we mentioned earlier, the publicity. You know, and but if we're talking about people say we're going through a mental health crisis right now. So I think part of it is also, well, what is causing that? What is causing the mental health crisis?
What's causing this such a dramatic increase that, I mean, I don't think times right. Okay, all right. Things have been getting a little spicy in the world, just over on the world stage. But here, domestically, in the past few years, like, yeah, COVID happened, but how did all this stuff lead up? I mean, that was even before COVID. How did all this stuff, all this mental health, start becoming such a prominent thing, such widespread? Like, generations nowadays, there's more mental health issues than it was back then. Mind you,
and
were they not tested?
I think we should also say, you know, also the ratio. I don't really know how to say it well, because, you know, also, obviously we have a bit more of it now simply due to the population increase. So I don't really know, like, the ratio of mental health to people has increased. I think we should say that. But let's, you know, and I personally believe these shootings don't happen because of one reason or another. I think it is a combination of several things. You know, one is, I think, the publicity, but how do we address the mental health issue? Because you could argue that the mental health issue affects more than these kind of shootings, right? Because because not everybody with mental health issues is causing these problems. It's not committing these acts, but that doesn't mean they're not affecting everyday life. So what do you personally think you would say is causing, in your opinion, or what would you say might be considered a factor in the mental health issues?
I think, I mean, like I said, it's just a widespread thing in general with so many little details, so many little nooks and crannies in it. But I think just, you know, it's a generic thing to say social media, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think people feel so minute in the world nowadays. They feel so minuscule that they're, like I said, they didn't want to get out there with their name in history. That people are
they want to be step above the rest, right?
People are so desperate for that. Like that, I agree on that bit. But, like, other than that, I have no idea what's caused such a huge increase. Like, yeah, I looked at some of the things they said. COVID, like, that did some things of that. But even then, I'm like, the increase was already happening way before COVID. So what was that about?
I think, in my opinion, one thing that could be leading to it is the lack of, I don't know how to say it, we don't encourage independent thought. And let me explain, because my thought process here. So when you're from ages, let's include preschool. So from ages 1 to 4/5, as a kid, you were saying, hey, do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? Kids are naturally curious. It's like
they're sponges.
Then they absorb all this
everything.
information. They're excited about the world. They want to know, what is this? What is this? Why is it too, right? But then we put them in a classroom and it's sit there and do what you're told. Don't do anything. Don't talk to anybody. Sit there and do what you're told, right? So it's don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to the person next to you sitting in class, and don't talk to yourself because that's weird, right? So you take people who are in, they're first natural, right? Naturally curious, right? And they want to learn about everything, right? But then you put them in a classroom for hours and hours and hours. And so if you include, grades 1 through 12, right? Plus kindergarten and preschool. So, that's 14 years of schooling, right? For that 14 years, they were told, do what you're told. Do what you're told. The problem, I think, with that is you're not encouraging independent thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and, doing independent, thought exercises, letting people think outside the box strengthens the mind, right? Because, the more you use it, right, your mind's like a muscle, right? The more you use it, the more you train it, you can do more with it, right? So I think one issue is possibly that we are so, listen to your teachers, listen to your parents, adamantly, right? Don't question anything, right? I remember as a kid, sometimes I was told, because I'm an adult. But, when you ask a question, right, it's like all I did was ask a question, why can't, because I'm curious or whatever, right? I'm trying to think of an example. I remember one time in 6th grade, we were taking a little math quiz. By little, I mean 3 questions. Number 2, for example, I remember it was number 2. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was Group A has 6 members of its club and gets 12 every month. Group B starts with 4 members and gets 9 every month. How long until both clubs have the same number of members? When will Group B? Well, Group A was not only started bigger, but was increasing bigger at the same time. And the entire class was trying to tell our teacher it's impossible because you have 2 greater numbers increasing compared to 2 smaller numbers. They are never going to meet. And we all got in trouble for it because we weren't listening. So we were thinking on our own, right? Or one example was, they would say, Bob ate 2/3 of his pizza, Jim ate 1/3, but how did Jim eat more of his pizza? And we wrote, because Jim's pizza was bigger, right? Because obviously if it's this big, 2/3 is still going to be smaller than 1/3 of something this big, right? But they were like, nope, wrong, because 2/3 is always bigger than 1/3. But what I'm trying to get at is you are killing the independent thought, right? You are not allowing people to think on their own, so they're not using their mind as much. Therefore, they're not strengthening their minds, which I think is leading to these issues. Because then we magically turn 18 and we go from do what you're told to instantly, you're an adult, figure it out. I don't know what to do.
So you're kind of saying that independence, kind of weak. I'm not trying to say weak mind, but some seem like they're not used to it.
They're not used to thinking on their own and handling it on their own because for their entire life they were told what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Now, I'm not saying this is the reason, but like I said earlier in the episode, I think there's a multiple of reasons, but I think this is one. I think one thing we could do is, especially in school, where a lot of kids, spend 14 years of their life, if they'd go through preschool, if not 13, they are told, just listen to your teacher. Do what you're told. Sit there, do what you're told. Sit there, do what you're told. And then suddenly it's, why can't you do anything yourself? Right? And then it's, well, are you that stupid? did you not learn anything? Did you not pay attention at school? It's like, no. Well, then you put all this stress on somebody who they're trying to go, but I did what I was told. I did my entire life what I was told to do. And then you put all of a sudden all this pressure on them, literally at the flick of a switch. I even remember I saw like a meme the other day that said, it's funny how we make fun of 18-year-olds nowadays who can't make a down payment on a house when last week when they graduated high school, they still had to ask to use the bathroom. So I think part of this issue is possibly, like I said, we don't allow independent thought. We don't strengthen their mind. We think sitting them in a classroom and talking to them for 8 hours is strengthening their minds. But we were all in school. We know that after a while, we just tune out. Right.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'll give you that one.
It's like, look, and it doesn't even help when, your teacher, I remember I was in calculus class one day and my teacher was like, I'm not going to lie to you guys, 99.99% of the stuff I'm going to teach you in this class you're never going to need in your life. And I'm
That's
like,
what we'd love to hear.
This is what I love to hear, especially when I had to take, it was in pre-calculus and I had to take calculus the year after that. I'm like, I'm in pre-calculus and you're telling me I don't need this.
So no independent thought is, what do you think is one of the components?
I think it's, to sum it all up, I know I kind of went on a little spiel there, but I kind of wanted to establish the background of what I meant. Is I think just the lack that we don't let people think on their own. And then you put them, right? You take people who, just to summarize one more time, the final time, you take someone who for 14 years were told, just do what you're told. And then the moment they walk across that stage in graduation, the moment they leave graduation, it's, why can't you do anything? Well, then you throw life at them. Well, they didn't get to do it on their own, and now they're stressed out. And now they don't know how to handle it. And they don't know how to handle certain things, like maybe mentally, or mental stresses, because they never needed to, because they never had to think on their own. Somebody else was always there with the answer. But that's one factor I personally think. And I guess that could probably be a topic for the next episode, another episode in the future. How can we encourage independent thinking? But
you're asking a bit much, especially nowadays, this climate. I mean, I'm not trying to get on anything, but
but I think
there's a certain thought we got to follow. If you don't follow that,
but I think
you're out.
When we talk about the mental health crisis and how kids can't handle their own action, I'm not justifying saying, well, they couldn't handle it, right? And therefore they did it. I'm not saying this is an excuse. Not at all. They are responsible for their actions because at the end of the day, they ultimately made that choice to commit that mass shooting. But they've never had to control themselves. Somebody else did it for them, right? Because do what you're told. So they never handled that on their own, and I think that could lead to I don't know how else to say it, like weaker minds, like lower self-esteem, which and when you have lower self-esteem, that leads to they lead to anger, that gets to angry because they're angry at whoever or whatever, and that just boils inside for years and years and years and years and years, and then unfortunately instead of seeking help, they commit these violent acts,
which to my grave, I'm probably not going to fully understand.
I won't either, and
because Cor, you've been angry, I've been angry before, but never have I thought that guy over there, I'm going to throw some haymakers, whatever, but not in my life. I just thought, yes, this is the way.
You've thought about. I'm not going to say I've never thought about committing a shooting like that. No, I've never thought that, but. People are like, man, I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to punch him in the face. You've thought about it, but you're not actually going to do it. You're just mad. And, I knew one guy, he liked to go on a walk every time he got mad. Right? That's his thing. Just hold it in, go vent somewhere else. So we discussed the mental health crisis. We discussed, a little bit of measures that I think we could take to mitigate the chance or, offer stiffer resistance. I know that this is really where it's going to kind of kick off a little bit. What about the gun control debate? Do you think that is potentially an area of concern?
I mean, it's one of the things that's such a topic. Like you brought up, most shootings they go for places they know no one's has a gun. So in the day, I'm like, I'll be honest, man. If someone's going to shoot me, I like to have a chance. You know, I mean,
Well, yeah.
I don't. The gun, personally, like I said, all personal opinion. The gun's not the problem. It's the person. They pulled that trigger. They did that. That's their action. Them having a gun, I mean, did it make it easier for them to kill more people? Sure. But they can easily just grab a knife and go on a stabbing spree.
There was actually, I don't remember the town, but there was actually a story in Japan, I believe, where a man killed 30 children in a school with a knife.
Yeah, I mean, you go to a busy town, like, you know, terrible saying this, but like, go to Times Square, get a knife. It's the person, not the tool that is used.
And since, you know, this is just as a Homelander, you know, thinking of this kind of stuff, that when you said that, it kind of thought came to me, you could, you know, with a shooter, you know, police follow. If you listen to the body cam footage of, like, the Nashville shooting, for example, the police were following the gunshots, right? You know, and you know, they went room to room to room because, you know, they didn't know where the shooter was, but then they heard, like, gunfires down this hall. So then they ran down that hall because, you know, that's where the shooter is. Because we can hear the gunfire. With a knife, you can't hear anything, right? You stab somebody, and let's say Times Square, put that in your pocket, and now you look like everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, some people might be able to identify me later, but like...
Yeah, they might identify you
I
later.
could already be gone to a different area, doing the exact same thing.
I'd be in a different state by the time they even realized it was me because I just blended in with everybody else. And that's another scary thing. You know, you know, there are some shooters, you know, they come in with like vests and all this stuff. Some just come up in normal clothes and start shooting, you know, and then they disappear because they look like everybody else running away. Yeah,
I mean, the whole gun debate, I think this is definitely kind of a conversation for later because there's a lot more to it. I kind of gave what my 2 cents is on it. I don't know if you agree or not on that, but everyone has their own opinions.
Everybody has their own opinion, and you know, there's not going to be a one-all be-all because you know, the first major mass shooting in United States history, you know, Columbine, where this I don't want to really trend kind of
the whole
kicked off because
shoot up school trend,
because then a lot of kids after Columbine said, "Oh, I wanted to make a statement like I made with the 2 Columbine shooters," which we're also not going to name. The Columbine shooters, they actually got their guns from somebody who was allowed to have guns, right? A legal person who was allowed to have them gave it to them, which we might have to do an in-depth.
Yeah, like, so that's that whole other...
We might have to do an episode on Columbine because that's, you know, unfortunately, mass shootings are definitely a homeland issue, and Columbine was really the first major incident that really, like, because shootings, school shootings prior to that, there was usually no more than 5 that die, which is still too many, but it was kind of like a one-off thing. But when Columbine happened and 13 people died, it really kind of woke up America, and especially the police force, you know.
Just kind of stop you a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to have to do an episode, but just a little touch on it. Like, for example, it was what gave the police the go in and neutralize the threat, because, you know, SWAT teams, we wait around for a siege, and then once it got too much, they raided the school. Officers were actually at the school when the shooting started. The problem was the protocol at the time was wait for SWAT, right? SWAT was armed. Well, you know, because, you know, SWAT has, you know, more weaponry, right? Like rifles compared to pistols. Because, you know, not all police officers had patrol rifles back in the day, right? SWAT is what had the rifles, and there were 2 threats. Nowadays, we know, go in there, right? You need to get in there quick because, unfortunately, one reason that it also took so long was the SWAT team entered the school on the opposite side, but that of the school. And by the time, I think it took them 3 hours to clear the school because, they didn't know where the shooters were because, the shooters had killed themselves at that point. But they didn't have the gunfire to go off of, like I discussed, that the police used in the Nashville shooting. So they had to go room by room by room for an entire high school. And it took, like I said, 3 hours for them to reach the library, which is where most of the killing took place. But I'll end that conversation there because that can be in a whole episode in and of itself.
I do kind of disagree on one thing you said, though, and that would be this is a Homeland Security problem. It is a Homeland Security, but I think it's a whole society. Society issue, because everything needs to come together to try to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think we kind of covered most of the bases. Like I said, this topic can easily shoot off in one direction, go down a different road. It's a multi-layered kind of conversation, and just so many different subjects come together.
Yeah, and we're definitely gonna have to. We kind of glossed over a little bit of everything related to these kind of attacks, and their argument could be made we might have to do an episode about each and every little aspect because there's just so much, and this is a very controversial topic. Everybody has their own views. I personally believe it's a combination of all the views. That's just my opinion, but yeah. So things I think we should let people know is if you see something, say something, right? And I know that you hear that a lot, but a lot of these attacks, there are warning signs. Sometimes it is just a change in someone's behavior. If someone is, they say signs are like they're staying after work late when they usually wouldn't. They're late to work. They seem more tired. Something just seems off about their personality, right? Because usually when they're kind of iffy about doing it, that's when they start acting weird. And then they act normal again once they've committed to it. So that time when they're debating it, that's the time to intervene. Mm-hmm. But, we'll never know. And like I said, that's probably a conversation for another day. Like I said, I know we kind of just...
We kind of
glossed over everything that could be involved, but
so many different components to it.
So many different, and once again, they all deserve an episode in of themselves. But I think we're gonna end the conversation here for today. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to the families affected, not only by the main mass shooting, but anybody and all families affected by these kind of attacks. But to end on a more positive note, Zachary Myers, the Southern U.S. Attorney the Southern District Attorney of Indiana, will be visiting the Vincennes University campus on Tuesday, which will be the 14th. It will be in the Technology Building. Also, students might know that as Ebner Hall. That is on Chestnut in the very back of campus. It is open to the public.
Right behind that bowling alley.
JSU, yeah, right behind the bowling alley. So, once again, for students, that's at Ebner Hall, which is right behind Updike. For the public, that is on Chestnut Street. And there's a big building that says Updike and it says Technology. So if you found Updike, Technology's next to it. If you found the Technology building, it's in there. It might say Ebner too.
Yeah.
Because all those buildings in the back are kind of connected.
Like I said, the public's open to come. Any students from any programs are welcome to come.
Yeah, we expect a high turnout, but always like a bigger one. He was gracious to come, and we really look forward to hearing him speak. But that's all we have for you guys today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Appreciate you guys joining us.
Bye.